Her speech could have been so cracked.
Shit yourself.
But it was given to an absolute bomb. Brother was legitimately just in the story to stop that special grade like 3 times and get his arm cut off. That's it. Which, when I watched on, I hated. Why give a side character a cool power and then not use it? So, I'm gonna do that today. Putting my own little spin on the power as a whole and giving it to someone who I think could put good use to it. Anyways, if you like, please give me a like and subscribe. I also have a podcast now with tons of content on there, which is straight in the description below. I also have a Spotify linked in the comments, which has the same, but you can listen while you're working out or something. Make sure to drop comments down below. I do read each and every single one. Less yap, let's get right into what if Deku had cursed speech. Deku's gonna grow up much like in canon. Not much changing in terms of family life. Inko raising him alone with Hisashi being out of the picture. He'd grow up idolizing heroes, people like All Might who save everyone with a smile. He wanted to be just like them, and in this timeline, Deku would be able to. Waking up on the day of his 4th birthday, opening his presents and having breakfast before rushing his mum out of the door, he had a date with the quirk doctor. Deku stands in the hallway of the doctor's office, holding an All Might plushie. He never gave up on his dream the entire time. In his head, he knew he was going to be powerful. The doctor opens the door of his office and the two of them go inside. This particular doctor, not Ujiko, would have the power similar to Mandalay from the forest training camp, being able to see the quirks of others and a little description of it. They sit down and the man would look over Deku, touching his left shoulder and looking him into his right eye. The man's quirk would activate and a mental image of Deku's quirk would come to his mind. Oh wow, aren't you special? It seems you do have a quirk, and a powerful one at that. It seems your words are amplified to the point of compliance. Inko and Deku look at the man confused. He stutters a little bit before explaining it a little bit simpler. Whatever Deku says will become an action. For example, if he were to say, stop, a person would stop mid-air. A very unique quirk if I do say so myself. Deku's face lights up. He had a quirk, and he was powerful too. They make their way home after the doctor's appointment. Deku thinking of all the combinations he could use his quirk with. What to say, how to say it, ideas floating in his head left and right. Right away Deku would ask Inko for help studying bigger words, verbs to help Deku expand his arsenal, which she would agree to, figuring she'd rather him know what he's doing rather than just blurting out some stupid stuff. This goes on for the rest of the afternoon and into night. Deku falling asleep mid-study and Inko tucking him in. He had a big day tomorrow. He wakes up the next day excited to tell his class of his new quirk, getting ready before being dropped off to school by Inko, being told to keep his quirk usage safe. Deku taking this to heart would walk through the front door, looking around and seeing his whole elementary school class staring at him. He walks inside with a smile on his face and proudly proclaims that he finally unlocked his quirk. The silent room erupts into excitement, people rushing over to Deku to see what he could do. Deku got up on a chair and the classmates surrounded him, Bakugo up the front. He grabs a pen from his pocket and waves it around a little bit before clearing his throat. He concentrated a little bit before staring at the pencil, before faintly talking. Stop. His words ringing harshly in everyone's ears, like what he just said was cursed. They all look on in amazement as the pen sits, floating mid-air. Deku, though having used his quirk for the first time, begins coughing uncontrollably, an immediate scratching feeling overwhelming Deku's throat. Deku curls into a ball, the pen falling from the sky and hitting him on the head. The teacher looks over to see this, asking what happened. The class shrugs as Deku is rushed to the nurse's office. As he leaves, he hears Bakugo speaking up to the rest of the class. I don't know what that quirk was, but it was probably lame. He just hurt himself by using his quirk on that pen. Maybe he could be a hero on some ants or something. The class laughs. Deku hearing this gets mad. Bakugo having flipped the class's perception on Deku 180. In this time, Deku was gone. Bakugo had convinced the rest of the class Deku's quirk was lame. A B-lister quirk, nothing more than a sidekick's quirk. Bakugo doing this because he felt threatened by Deku's power, wanting to keep him down so he would stay the top dog. Deku in the nurse's office sits quietly, drinking some water to soothe his throat as a nurse would have called his mum. He thinks about the words Bakugo said as he left. It was unfair. Bakugo already had a powerful quirk. Why do you have to pick on him? On the day of his quirk awakening? This stirs more in Deku's head. For some reason, this just infuriates Deku. He would realize some people just aren't your true friends, seeing Bakugo's true colors shining through. As Inko arrives, Deku would explain what happened, how he used his quirk on a pen to make it float, the pain he felt after it, and Bakugo's remarks. She hears this and decides to take him out of that elementary school, already knowing what would go down if she left him there. She takes him out that day and puts him into another school 5 minutes down the road, where Deku would stay for the rest of his school career. From there, Deku would begin training, this time on his quirk. Knowing the backlash of using it, Deku trains on it bigger and bigger items, every day using his quirk on things like pens, wallets, water bottles, anything. He would also be sitting and learning new words with Inko on the side, getting his smarts up on the side too, learning lots of new commands to use. As he's doing this one day, Deku would start thinking about Bakugo. If Deku was a hero, he had to face people like Bakugo. Close combat, quick, powerful. Sure, Deku could probably use his quirk on him, but what if he got close? Or stopped him from talking? This dwells on for a while before he asks his mum to sign him up for some MMA training, learning the basics of a couple different fighting styles as he would grow up. He never would show off his powers to the rest of his class, or at school either, people knowing he had a quirk but not really understanding it much. He was saving it for when he had better grasp over it. This goes on for years, bringing Deku from age 4 to 14, having learned a lot in those years, having mastered over his quirk and his own unique fighting style. The last day of school comes and the teacher doesn't tell anyone about Deku going to UA, instead pulling Deku aside and giving him some words of encouragement himself. And from there, the bell rings and the final day of school would be over. Deku grabs his stuff and makes his way out the door, deciding to go hit the gym quickly before he goes home. He does so, getting a little pump and missing the sludge villain attack. Starting his walk home, and in the distance, Deku starts hearing explosions. He sees smoke erupting from a couple of streets away. A smile creeps over his face as Deku rushes right in that direction, running through the alleyway and around shops as he finally sees it. In the middle of a crowded road, a packed street of civilians surrounded by a handful of heroes, aimed at a single villain, the sludge villain. Deku makes his way to the front line, just happy to see some heroes in action. He would sit and watch for a minute or two, watching as the heroes didn't really get anywhere. Deku watched the villain as he overhears two of the heroes talking. Damn it, I don't know how this kid's still alive in there. I'm a failure as a hero, my quirk just isn't good enough. Deku's eyes widen. There was a kid in there? He looks at the villain, squinting his eyes a little bit to see a silhouette. Oh my god, there was. Deku takes a step forward, his mind processing things as he finally would click. That face, it looked familiar. And his quirk. Two and two are put together, Deku realizing who was inside the villain. Who, without thinking, his legs move, rushing past a layer of onlookers and through a group of heroes handling the fires. He drops his stance, rushing in as the villain in front of him. The sludge villain shoots a tendril at Deku, which he would slip. Deku then jumps up, looking down on the villain as Bakugo inside. The street's silent as Deku speaks. Fall apart. These words ring in the sludge villain's ears. Deku falling from midair as suddenly the sludgy mass collapses around Bakugo. Bakugo gets a huge breath in as Deku grabs him, yanking him out of the villain and shoving him to the floor. The villain again reforms himself right in front of Deku, about to swallow the two of them up as Deku speaks his second word. Freeze. Everything around Deku in that moment completely locks up. Deku looking around at the villain midway through swallowing him before running away, not towards the heroes, but kind of just, running away. He was freaking out about his illegal quirk usage. The crowd could do nothing but stare on. Who was that kid? What was his quirk? All he did was say two words. Bakugo goes to the floor. Bakugo on the floor finally catches his breath, coughing up sludge as memories flooded his mind. Memories of a small green-haired boy back in primary school. A green-haired boy who made a pen float with his voice. It couldn't be. Bakugo, could do nothing but watch as Deku rushed away. The heroes flooding in to arrest the sludge villain before he unfroze, and with that, the sludge villain would be taken care of. In this timeline, All Might doesn't get involved, and although he saw a great potential in Deku, I'ma just say he gave it to Mirio or something, like, no givebacks. Deku from there would walk home as normal, a huge smile on his face knowing what he did, along with who he just saved. He was finally one up on Bakugo. Finally, he made his first strides as a real hero, and for the first time in his life, he used his quirk on someone else. And to his surprise, it didn't hurt half as much as using it on non-living things. He had to hold on to that feeling and start training, which is exactly what Deku would do, using all of the motivation he just saved up to train harder. Still going to Dagobah Beach, this time training alone, using it as a means to use his quirk freely, as Dagobah Beach was kind of a trash dump and no one went there. For around 6 months straight, Deku would just use his physical strength to clear the beach, using his quirk to get things unstuck or compress them. Though, through this he would discover other parts of his quirk that he didn't know were possible, like using commands on himself. Though it was rare and more of a stamina recovery tool than anything, using a command like heal or endure to make short work of the rest of the trash of the beach, using the rest of the 4 months to work on his fighting style along with his study. And with this, he was more than ready. The 10 months being up, and Deku would make his way into UA, making his way onto the school grounds and walking through the gates of UA and inside the auditorium where he would first start on the written part. Now, Deku's been studying and learning since he was a kid. Quirk kinda demands it, if anything, so Deku's no slouch. He would score easy 90%, much better than in canon, and would also get rid of a lot of his nerves. He would be there, from there he would make his way to the prac exam auditorium, being sat across the auditorium from Bakugo, not even seeing each other. Deku listens on quietly, no interruptions from either, as everything goes smoothly. They are dismissed and sent to their prac exam site, Deku being sent to the same as in canon and in the crowd of people, focusing on his breath and heart rate to calm his nerves. He opens his eyes to see the door slightly opening, looking up at President Mike, who was sat on his phone. Deciding to take the risk, Deku rushes right out of the door at top speed. People tell him to stop and that he's cheating. President Mike tells them to shut up and follow his footsteps, but by the time they look at him, he was gone. Deku having split into an alleyway before tearing some robots one by one. He rushes in, clearing his throat slightly and opening a small bottle of throat spray. Smiling, he says his first command: explode. 3 2-pointers in front of him erupt into flames, malfunctioning before exploding on contact. Deku rushes around the flames. He would meet another group of robots, dodging a strike from a 3-pointer as more come to his direction. Deku smirks, all the robots rushing at him at once. He jumps off the wall next to him, staring down at the horde of the robots below him. Crumble. 12 points of robots below Deku sink more and more into the floor, gravity increasing exponentially over their entire bodies as they fall to the floor, smashing into a million pieces. Deku's throat begins to hurt slightly, grabbing his throat spray and continuing on. Deku does this for about 5 minutes straight. The others catching up to him would see the massacre Deku had already put on. At the end of the 5 minutes, Deku had racked up a solid 77 villain points. Feeling good with himself, he started to walk off, his throat on fire and barely able to speak a word more. He's walking off, the students coming from behind him, rushing full speed the opposite direction as him. Deku, confused, looks on, feeling the ground beneath him shake violently, windows above him cracking and falling buildings toppling. The 0-pointer rears his head from around the corner. Deku understands what was going up, starting to run away like the others. This is until he hears someone, a voice from behind him, about 15 meters. A girl. He looks back, following the sound and seeing her stuck under a rock. His eyes go wide as he sees the 0-pointer approaching, and quickly. Thoughts flood his mind. He had to save her. Once again, his legs begin moving on their own, rushing towards her, rushing past Ida and into battle. He stares up at the 0-pointer looming overhead. The teachers stare on, thinking Deku is crazy. Deku makes it to Uraraka before the 0-pointer. Seeing a rock on top of her, shatter. The rock breaks and crumples around her leg. Deku grabbing her and rushing her the opposite direction, though it's not enough. The 0-pointer loomed for too long. A huge shadow overtakes Deku and Uraraka's. The foot of the 0-pointer now directly over their heads. Not good, not good. He had to do something or they would both die. He summons every ounce of will he had, screaming from the bottom of his guts in the last-ditch effort to stop. Uraraka, looking above her, bracing for impact, would be astonished, seeing the 0-pointer completely freezing itself inches above the two of them. Nezu straightaway disarms the robot as the exam ends, Deku collapsing next to Uraraka. Pro heroes on board rushing quickly to grab the two of them before the 0-pointer gets unfrozen, getting Uraraka healed and sending Deku straight to Recovery Girl's office, completely knocked out. Deku wakes up to see it was nighttime already. He asks what happened to him, but no words came out his mouth. Recovery Girl sits him back down and tells him what happened. His vocal cords got extremely damaged in that last quirk use, and for the meantime, he's going to be unable to use his quirk. But she grabs a piece of paper from her pocket and hands it to Deku. Welcome to UA. I was surprised myself seeing you stop that 0-pointer all alone. You're really tough, aren't you, kid? Deku opens the message and reads it in his head. His hero journey had finally begun. All Might welcoming him to UA with a big smile on his head. Deku having blown the others out of the water in points. Deku got Bakugo's villain points plus 70 hero points. He's happy about this. He was not only number 1 in UA, he was just in general. Recovery Girl tells him to keep his voice rested for at least a month and no quirk usage allowed, but he's welcome to have a small conversation or two. He thanks her and is sent home, showing his mum the message, and they both celebrate, getting dinner together. School started about a week after the message came through. Deku, still barely unable to talk and unable to use his work, would get dressed and hop in the car. Today was his first day of UA and he was pumped. He walked through the gates of UA, looking around the garden and main hallway. The place was huge, marbled floors. He felt richer just walking inside. After making his way inside, he would ask a random for directions, his voice croaking a little bit, which, he would apologize for. The person he would ask would be Mirio. Mirio would walk Deku to class 1A, asking for his name. Deku would tell him and a huge smile would creep over Mirio's face. Ah, so you're the one everyone's been talking about. That explains the croaky voice. You must have fought hard in the entrance exam. Deku nods, kind of freaking out. This was a big deal. He was already a big deal. Something Deku was not used to. He would stand in the hall in the doors of class 1A, staring at the letters before scanning the hallway once more. Mirio legitimately disappearing into nothing next to him. He uses this quirk. Before Deku would open the door. As he opens it, he sees a quite unfamiliar sight. Bakugo of all people arguing with a nerdy, tall-looking kid. Deku tried to look away, but once again he was already the center of attention. Ida coming up to him and introducing himself. Deku waving at him and pointing at his throat before pointing down. Ah, overuse your quirk, I see. Deku smiles and walks to the back of class. Glad he somehow got out of that. He would sit down and start getting his stuff out before a man in a sleeping bag would rise to the floor next to Deku, staring him down for a second and squinting, trying to read Deku a little bit as he introduces himself. My name's Aizawa. I'm your homeroom teacher. Meet me outside and put your gym uniforms on. We're doing a little test. The class groans, the usual people complaining about it being unfair before Aizawa shuts them up. They would eventually meet him outside, Deku coming out last and sitting at the back of the class, trying not to be the center of attention, staying under the radar before he's called out by first name out to the front. He sighs and walks up, Aizawa explaining the ball throw test, telling Deku to throw it normally first. Deku does this and gets about 80 meters. Aizawa impressed as Deku uses his quirk this time. Deku scratches the back of his neck and shows some teeth, before rummaging through his pocket and showing Aizawa the note from the doctor. Aizawa's face drops. Ugh, lame. Alright, fine. Bakugo, you come up instead. Don't think that means you're out of the test, Midoriya. Deku feels a drop of sweat go down his face. Bakugo throwing it and getting his usual score, staring at Deku afterwards and blowing an explosion in his hand. Deku rolls his eyes, doing the entirety of the test quirkless pretty much.
somehow staying top 15, landing himself 14th place. You know, he's been training for a while and working out, like, no way he loses to Invisible Girl, you know, Mineta, that tail guy, let's be real, Coda, like, what the hell? And, you know, maybe Jiro. Just saying. Anyway, Aizawa is low-key impressed with his score. Nothing, noting things to himself as he tells the class that he was joking about the expulsion. The class boos Aizawa before they're sent off to orientation. Class would after that would go as usual. Deku staying borderline silent in the back of the class for a week or two once Bakugo once again using every opportunity he had to mess with Deku. Even still, Deku in his head memorized everything Bakugo said, did to him, every lunch tray he tipped over or shove he gave him. He wanted to get his get back. A week later, he would have the opportunity. All Might entering their class like a normal person and explaining the battle trials they will go through today. The 2v2 heroes versus villains. And just in time for Deku's quirk to be usable again. His throat feeling much better than ever. Pause. He glares at Bakugo, who catches his eye. Deku grinning slightly before looking away. Bakugo was about to be public enemy number 1. They get their outfits on like in canon. Deku rocking a cloak like Doflamingo, but, you know, nice and dark green. Rocking the same mouth tattoo Inumaki has. Also rocking some clean white shoes. He walks in dripped out, standing at the back of the class as All Might announces the battle teams. Team 1, Deku and Uraraka versus Team 2, Ida and Bakugo. Deku in his head jumps for joy, but in reality he looks at the floor, trying to seem off-putted by this. Bakugo seeing this, pumps his ego up even more. He makes his way inside, explosions already blaring. Deku and Uraraka also make their way in, to the front of the building instead. For once, Deku would talk, introducing himself properly to Uraraka and explaining his injury for the last month and how he got it. She apologizes for needing his saving and messing with his quirk, which he shoots down. It would all be worth it after what he was going to do with Bakugo right now. The system goes off and straight away Deku rushes in, leaving Uraraka behind and yelling for her to find him without her. To find the room without him. He runs straight through the hallway, the class watching on, All Might included. What was he thinking? He runs up the stairs, bouncing off the wall at the halfway point and rolling up the staircase, running about 10 meters down the hallway before he finally sees him. Bakugo slowly falling down the stairs opposite to him. Deku grins immediately, Bakugo landing and finally seeing Deku would rush in with an explosion. Guess your balls finally dropped, huh? They meet in the middle and Bakugo sends his normal looping right hook. Deku about 2 meters away watches as Bakugo's palm ignites mid-punch. His grin turns into a smile as he licks his lips. Stop. Bakugo freezes midair, explosions completely cancelling out. His fist caught about 30 centimeters away from Deku's face. The class over the intercom looks horrified. Is this Deku's quirk? They hadn't seen it in first person yet. It was so... As the class gawks over him on the intercom, Deku goes in, rushing at a frozen Bakugo, hitting him with a 1-2 combo to the gut before releasing his hold over him. Bakugo drops down and smacking on the floor, Deku smacking him in the gut with a mean kick. Bakugo shoots backwards, Deku staring him down once more would speak again. Stop. Once again, Bakugo freezes mid-air, still feeling the impact of the last kick as Deku rushes in once more at him. Deku jumps off in the air. Deku jumps off the wall next to him and sends a haymaker right kick at Bakugo's side, unfreezing him to redirect the direction he was going at. Bakugo slams on the wall next to him, smacking his head on it and laying out half unconscious. Deku stares at him. Now, kneel. Bakugo's eyes widen, his body instinctively kneeling in front of Deku. Head held low, muscles completely locked up in that position. Bakugo screams at Deku, "What did you do to me, you damn Deku? I'll kill you! I'll kill you right now!" Deku rolls his eyes at Bakugo. Silence. Bakugo immediately quiets down, stuck silent and kneeling before Deku, half beaten. Deku looks over at him. Not a good sight if I do say so myself. Deku looks behind him and stares at the way of the camera, showing the class Bakugo on the floor in that state. Deku's hold beginning to wear off as Bakugo's screams begin to come out, his body thrashing like a rabid dog. Deku takes a few steps backwards, watching as Bakugo breaks his hold over him, straight away exploding at Deku, his right gauntlet pulsating red as a smile creeps over Bakugo's face. "Go to hell, Deku. I'll make sure you don't become a hero." He holds his hand out, gauntlet facing Deku. Deku knew something was up, remembering back to when he first explained his quirk. Right as Bakugo pulled the pen, Sorry, Mum decided to just yell out of nowhere. As Bakugo pulled the pin, All Might came over the intercom. "No, stop, you'll kill..." He's cut off by another noise. This time, it was the same ringing of a command. Deku speaks. Deku speaking calmly. "Shatter." The gauntlet on Bakugo's right arm shattering into a million pieces, water spilling over the floor next to him. Deku walks forward, looking at his left hand and repeating the same command once more. Bakugo lost both gauntlets, beginning to back up as Deku walks him down. Pause. Bakugo stops in his track. Deku 5 meters away, 4 meters, 3, 2. He clocks his foot up, kicking Bakugo square in the stomach with a Sparta kick. Bakugo still frozen midair, feeling the impact but unable to react. Before Deku says his last command, "You know, Bakugo, you deserve this. Shit yourself." Bakugo's eyes go wide as just as commanded he flies backwards. Impact of the kick finally reaching him as he can't hold it anymore. Deku, as he's mid-tumble, would speak once more. "Now, sleep." Bakugo slumps to the floor, completely knocked out. The class looks on, grossed out. And because they don't have the audio, they didn't hear Deku make the command. So, to them, Bakugo got his ass kicked so bad, he knocked out and shit himself. Uraraka comes up the stairs after scanning the first floor. Deku laughs a little bit, telling her not to worry as they rush to the 3rd floor. They find the bomb room. Deku passing Ida as they legit walk inside and touch the bomb. The class stands and stares. His quirk was insane. What even happened? Deku and Uraraka make their way back to the class as people ask what Deku's power is. Deku smirking a little bit and deciding to keep it hidden for the time being. Bakugo is picked up by one of the medical robots and taken to Recovery Girl. Her finding out he was only asleep wakes his ass up and sends him back to class. The memories of what happened hit Bakugo as he woke up, his hatred for Deku going even further. They end up finishing and the rest goes as canon. Deku getting the MVP because, of course he did. And then he ends up going back to class. Bakugo returning to class the next day, a consistent scowl on his face. Every laugh he thought was directed at him. Every giggle in Bakugo's eyes, he got embarrassed in front of the whole class. Deku legitimately had him on his knees. From the back of the class, he harbors this hate. Slowly it itches away at him, constantly wanting to fight. Due to this, Bakugo begins to train like mad. This goes on for a week, regular classes continuing as in canon, learning some algebra and stuff until they're told by their homeroom teacher that they will be going on a field trip today instead of their regular classes. The class is confused until Aizawa explains where. The USJ. Deku already knew this place. The USJ, it was famous around the world, It's got rescue facilities. He gets hyped straight away going onto the bus. The class follows behind him as they eventually take off. Like in canon, the regular chat goes down. Froppy asking who everyone thinks is the strongest. Majority of the class would actually choose Todoroki over Deku. Everyone's still confused on what his quirk was. From the front of the class of the bus, Aizawa listened on. He too was curious. He read his file, but that hadn't been updated since age 4. He wanted to know the details. Deku thinks a while before flat out telling him. He explains how his quirk works, how whenever he says an action or a command directed at a person, object, or thing in general, that thing must be commanded. So far, he hasn't fought anyone strong enough for Deku to break his grasp yet, though he doesn't know his limits. The class is shocked. His power was borderline godly. They ask him a flurry of questions. What commands can he do? Can he insta-kill someone? Deku kind of just sits there and thinks. He hadn't really thought about that yet.
While he was kind of lost in his own head, the bus finally stopped, having reached its final destination, the USJ. Deku stands from the outside looking in. This place was huge, like bigger than he'd ever thought. He scans the place, landslides, rivers, ruins. This place had everything. He stepped inside, Pro Hero 13 beginning her speech. Deku would look around, still scanning the place. Aizawa coming up to him and telling him to pay attention. Deku jumps from this, not suspecting it, quickly turning his head to meet Aizawa's.
seeing a glimpse of something as he did. He looks at Aizawa before looking to his left ever so slightly. From the corner of his eyes, a mist appeared in the USJ, swirling and shaking before it shot out. Villains coming out by the hundreds. He looked back at Aizawa before, with wide eyes, shaking his head clear, looking back to the class and speaking, this time using his quirk. Run away. His throat itches ever so slightly, the entire class's legs tensing up and sprinting full force, almost out of instinct, out of the USJ. Aizawa, having just seen the villains, thanks Deku before jumping down himself. Deku calls from a distance, telling the class there's villains in the USJ and to be careful. Due to this, the entire class is still running outside as Korigiri warps up, Ida using his quirk on top of that to sprint full speed back to UA. Deku in the USJ stares Korigiri down, who looks on confused at the lone boy atop the staircase. Where is your class, little boy? And where is All Might? I was told he would be here. Deku, without thinking, once again uses his quirk. Stop. The words ringing in Korigiri's mind and locking his body completely in time. Deku runs over full force at a frozen Korigiri, slamming a kick right into his misty head, followed by 2 shots to the stomach and another kick as time unfreezes again. Korigiri's mist is sent flying backwards, gusts of wind blowing it off, uncovering his metallic body underneath. Korigiri snaps out of it, sending a portal towards Deku, who jumps backwards, speaking once more. Return. The mist slams back to where it came from, and Korigiri is shocked. Deku, not wasting a second, uses a new command. Sleep. Korigiri swangs slightly before slamming to the floor. Deku sighing, thankful that he could beat him. His own quirk was tricky. He looked back at the door, seeing the class long gone, before he looks down the staircase. He sees Aizawa still fighting, Shigaraki and Nomu at the back of the pack watching on, waiting for Korigiri to come back. Deku takes advantage of this, jumping down the staircase to meet Aizawa. Shigaraki notices this, knowing something was up. No kids being teleported. Korigiri isn't coming back, and now a single kid runs from the top. Shigaraki straightaway summons Nomu. Nomu, kill the brat over there, then the pro afterwards. I want to watch him first. Deku's eyes open wide as in the distance he sees a figure snap his head right at him, lunging like an animal towards Deku quicker than anything he's ever seen. The Nomu rips through the villains in front of him indiscriminately, going right at Deku. Deku flinches slightly, throwing his hands up in a defensive pose, blocking his face as a last-ditch effort, speaking. Heh! It was too late though. The Nomu swung its fist back and slammed against Deku's arms, snapping them on contact. Thankfully, Aizawa had cancelled its quirk last second. Deku though still gets ragdolled across the USJ, slamming against the staircase, slamming it back against the staircase, back first. With 2 broken arms and a broken wrist, he barely stays conscious, watching as the Nomu once again locks onto him after screeching. Deku in his head screams for himself to move, anything, but he couldn't. He watches on as the Nomu ran full force at him once more, this time being stopped by someone. Something. Ida, having made it back to UA much earlier, would have just managed to get someone in time, a towering figure with golden hair. All Might. Don't you worry because I am here. No smile on face. Deku smiles at him. Thank you, All Might. He slumps for a second before forcing himself to stand. Heal. He feels himself healing ever so slightly, the pain subsiding if only a little bit. Cuts clearing up, but arms still broken underneath. He watches as All Might fights Sonomu. Aizawa, being overwhelmed by the fodder, cannot help. So instead, Deku stands up. He waits for an opening, swaying side to side until All Might lands a punch that gives him some distance between the two. Fall. Instantly, the Nomu plummets into the floor, the weight on top of it being too much for even it. Deku feeling the impact on himself too, his throat aching and his head ringing. This, though, gave All Might some much needed time. He lands 100 blows on the Nomu at once before Deku's quirk wears off, clocking his fist back and putting his all into it before sending the Nomu flying out of the USJ. Deku, seeing this, smiles before passing out, the adrenaline getting him only so far. All Might then helps Aizawa in the fodder with the fodder as the rest of the heroes who came to lock up the villains. Shigaraki not being able to escape due to no Kirigiri would end up with both of them being locked up. Deku being sent right to the hospital due to his state, as Aizawa and All Might are questioned. The rest of the class would get away scot-free, like legitimately scot-free. Maybe they got a little bit tired from running, but that's just about it. All the class visiting Deku in the hospital as he recovers, his arms shattered after the Nomu's punch, needing surgery. He wakes up 2 days later in a daze, seeing Aizawa next to him. He explains the rest of the class is currently asleep, before thanking Deku himself for his work in the USJ. He doesn't reprimand him or anything. Deku feels nice about this, but is unable to speak once more, being quirkless once more for at least 5 days. Deku in these 5 days is discharged back to school and getting people like Momo and stuff to write down his notes for him, due to his broken arms, you know. Deku gets kind of popular from this, Bakugo hating every second of it. That should be his attention, and that should have been him in the USJ. If Deku didn't make him run, none of this would have happened. Class continues from there as normal, Deku getting stuff done for him pretty much until the final day, day 7. Deku getting his cast off and being able to speak again on the day of the UA Sports Festival, being told to keep it pretty minor on quirk usage, but other than that, he's good. Deku would agree to this and makes his way to the festival late actually, having Bakugo do the speech instead of him as he missed it, only arriving after the obstacle course was already done. He's still allowed to join, Aizawa and All Might vouching for him, joining the same team as in canon for the cavalry battle and making it to the 1v1s without using his quirk at all. He's the first in the battle up versus a general studies student, a strange looking one at that. Purple hair, scruffy looking. Deku is reminded of Aizawa. Something about him seemed off. The battle began and straight away he began speaking, talking down on Deku. How does it feel to be blessed? That type of stuff. Deku straight away knowing what was up. He was one and the same. A voice activated quirk. He knew it too well. Deku interrupted him mid smack talk. Walk out of bounds for me. Shinso's body locks up. In his head, he's screaming. This kid. Of all people, he had to get paired up against this kid? The only kid in the whole of Japan with a quirk similar to his? In his mind, he curses Deku, cursing his strength, but in the end, he couldn't do anything about it. Deku simply outclassed him in every single way. His quirk was better, Deku was stronger and faster, and Deku had better range of attack. There was nothing he could do. Shinso wakes up after falling out of bounds, slamming his hand against the floor. Deku kinda just looks over him at him, like, what's his problem? Before shrugging and walking away. He sits in the stands watching the rest of the fights. Todoroki's Ice Geyser, Ida winning, before he would once again be called out of the locker room, about to face his second opponent, Todoroki. He walks himself down, seeing Todoroki waiting for him at the bottom of the staircase. Deku, thinking this was going to be some sabotaging stuff, would walk right back up the stairs, going another route down, and making his way to the locker room. In this timeline, completely missing his conversation with Todoroki about his family. They're eventually called out, Deku walking on the stage and being met with tons of applause. People actually thought his quirk was top tier. To them, he straight up has mind control, which, you know, was pretty much right. Todoroki's then called out. The crowd equally as excited. You could tell people were interested in this fight. The crowd goes silent as the starting pistol is finally shot. Todoroki slamming his foot down onto the floor as a geyser of ice is slammed towards Deku. Deku sees it coming, opening his mouth and taking a deep breath in before speaking. Explode. People in the crowd are shocked. Their ears are filled with a strange ringing, and after those words were said, watching on as the ice explodes into a million pieces in front of them, completely disappearing and filling the arena with the smoke. Bakugo in particular was shocked. Deku could do that? That damn copycat. The smoke looms around, Deku rushing in and taking a beeline left, trying to keep a grasp over his position in the ring. He finds the edge of the smoke, seeing a faint shadow of Todoroki in the distance. With a smirk on his face, he looks at him, once again breathing in before speaking again. Fly away. The smoke in front of him slams in the opposite direction, a path clearing in front of him on his way... on his way in front of Todoroki. His words echoing throughout the stadium. The path clearing, heating... The path clears, heading right at Todoroki, hitting him and sending him flying. The stadium cheers, watching the figure slam out of bounds, watching as it shatters against the wall. Horrified until once again a geyser of ice comes shooting at Deku, this time from the right. Deku's eyes widen, looking over to see the ice shards he shot out of bounds, smashed into a million pieces. He looks back up at the ice that Todoroki sent, watching as it got closer and closer. Much like in canon, Deku wasn't done yet. He looked up slowly and spoke. Shatter. The ice in front of him cracked slightly before turning into mush in front of both of them. Deku, using this to his advantage, rushes in at Todoroki, slipping more ice that he sent at him. He gets in decently close, pausing Todoroki in the middle of the ring, rushing in and sending a mean kick to his stomach. Todoroki feels this but can't move, powerless as Deku wails on him. As Deku's quirk runs out, Todoroki slams backwards, all the impacts hitting at once as Todoroki coughs blood. He didn't think he was going to beat this hard. He slams his foot down, Deku being caught this time and being half frozen in an instant. The crowd going nuts as Todoroki shakes himself awake after the onslaught. Deku looks at himself. He was frozen? He thinks for a second, watching Todoroki on the floor. He hasn't used his left side. Perfect. Deku speaks. Melt. The ice turning into water and dropping into a puddle on the floor before evaporating in front of him. Todoroki's shocked by this. The whole time, Deku could have just melted it. But now Todoroki was getting more and more frozen. Neglecting his fire side has started to take an effect on him. Deku rushing in once more with step left, facing Todoroki's fire side and clocking his fist back. Deku thinks of a command. He would smirk, having watched Kirishima's battle with Tetsu before. Harden. Deku's hand hardens like Kirishima's skin, turning jagged and sharp as it impacted Todoroki's side. Deku slams his kidney. Todoroki's vision going white for a second before he sent flying backwards once more, being close to the edge, going into his head like in canon, remembering his backstory and stuff. This time though, Deku is clueless, so he keeps rushing in. Todoroki slamming to the floor and barely getting up, as Deku does so, about 5 meters away from him. Todoroki finally has enough, closing his fist as fire shoots from his side, ice crystals forming below his feet. Deku looks on in shock but kind of excited. He smirks. Took you long enough. Too bad though. Return. Todoroki's fire is straight away dismissed, as is his ice, returning back to Todoroki a feeling he's never felt before. It was strange. Now, pause. Todoroki's once again frozen, Deku walking him down with a smirk still on his face. You know, you should use both sides more often. I could tell you were crazy strong. Sorry it's gotta end like this. Now, disappear. Todoroki goes from 1 meter in front of Deku to slamming into the outer-bound walls in legitimately a second. The crowd not even seeing Todoroki hit the walls. He was just there. He smacks it and slumps against the wall before being completely knocked out. Deku getting a cheer louder than anything they've done thus far, and getting his way into the final round against a familiar little rodent, Bakugo, walking into the locker room and seeing him already sitting there. No phone, no music, dead, silent, staring at his palms and looking at the floor. This might be an issue. Deku and Bakugo walk up to the stage, completely silent, both with their hands in their pockets. They get to the top and immediately stare daggers at each other's. Bakugo with the look of a killer in his eyes. Everyone can feel the tension in the stadium. You could cut it with a knife. Something was up between these two. Present Mike interrupts and introduces the two, explaining both of their quirks to everyone as they both stretch, still staring at each other. He's interrupted by Midnight holding up her hand. No one could wait any longer, so instead, they blew it. Straight away, Bakugo takes his hand out of his pockets, his palm igniting right away into a bright flash. Bakugo, using his pockets to keep himself warm, would instantly have a howitzer impact charged. He exploded in as quick as possible, saving the sweat on his hand and igniting it as quickly as possible right in the direction of Deku. Deku's eyes immediately going wide. He was quick, almost as quick as a Nomu, but Deku wasn't going to make that mistake again. He jumps to the left last second using the first word he could think of, return. He didn't even know if an explosion could be returned. Apparently, it could though, as Bakugo loses the explosion from his hand and the sweat that made it. He looks at his hand for a second, Deku's words still ringing in his head. Return! What the hell did that dumbass do? He begins to fall, just managing to catch himself, locking back onto Deku and exploding in once more. Deku dodges for a while, deciding he'd rather end it in one move. He waits and waits, Bakugo growling recklessly and sending AP shots at Deku, blinding him, anything. Deku continuing to dodge until finally Bakugo stops for a breath. Deku smirks. He takes a small breath in. Go to sleep, little boy. Bakugo's eyes go wide. He blocks his ears, but it's too late. Deku's words bouncing in Bakugo's head. His eyes begin to slowly shut. He tries to fight it, blowing explosions. Oh, where am I? Sorry. Oh, sorry. Blowing explosions at himself, but it's no use. Bakugo is defeated, and by the end, and by a very unconventional means too. Deku is given the first place trophy, and Bakugo gets the second, but still is asleep. After this, he would go back to class, giving his trophy to his mum, like a little memento, making his way back to class to see this huge binder of hero internships he has to choose from. He sighs and looks around the room. He got the most, and by a long shot. His power was useful as hell. He can rescue, buff you, stop people mid-fight. He's versatile. He looks through his list for about 2 days straight, looking and searching for his best fit. He would even ask from some of the teachers, showing them a small list of ones he had picked out and ones he was iffy on. He went to multiple, Aizawa, Present Mike, etc., eventually going up to All Might. They sit down and have a small conversation, Deku bringing up his list and All Might looking through it. You got an invite from Sir All Might? You got an invite from Sir Night-Eye? Deku looks at the sheet. Yes, he did. It kind of slipped his mind. All Might thinks Night-Eye's quirk could help Deku in hand-to-hand combat. Plus, his successors there in Mirio. All Might suggests Deku go to Night-Eye, saying there's a strong third year there that you could train with. Deku, excited, decides to accept, making his way to Sir Night-Eye. He makes his way there, getting let in by Bubble Girl before being taken upstairs. Walking into Sir Night-Eye's room, he sees Sir Night-Eye, a small, scrawny old man and a tall kid with a weird haircut. Deku introduces himself. The three of them introduce themselves too. Mirio, All Might in his unbuffed form, and Sir Night-Eye. Straight away, they're put to the test. Deku being told to try his luck against Mirio. Sir Night-Eye curious on how their quirks would interact. Deku agrees to this and eventually they get ready, facing off against Mirio. He could already tell he was strong, but what was his quirk? The battle begins and Mirio slips through the floor. Deku shocked and confused on where he went. He listened. Front, back, up, before looking down. He was down there? Or maybe he teleported? He looks at the floor in front of him, waiting until he hears something from behind. Mirio pops out of the floor. Deku instinctively sending a kick to him, at which Mirio slips right through. Night-Eye's impressed by his reaction speed. Deku looking back and seeing no damage done. What the? He's met by a gut punch by Mirio, sending him flying backwards. Deku kinda out of it shakes himself awake. Halfway in the air, he takes a breath in. Slow down. Deku slows gradually, catching himself before dismissing his technique. He looks on at Mirio, watching closely as once again he falls through the floor. Deku tries something, looking at the floor and speaking again. Release. Mirio shoots from the floor, flying into the air, looking around, confused. Huh? He looks around, seeing Deku standing there. Now stop. Mirio stops midair, floating and unable to use his quirk. Not good. Deku comes in, about to send a mean kick at Mirio until Night-Eye stops him. He was more than interested in Deku. For days they would train, All Might overlooking it, watching as Deku learns to predict moves from Night-Eye, learning what every command actually does. Release working like Aizawa's erasure. Returning a quirk effect based on its original position. He also learns more about his physical buff commands, learning he can use them on others, though it does take a toll on him. Using it on All Might a couple of times after seeing his injury, still not knowing who he was, which genuinely helps a lot. All Might's injury beginning to reshape after about 2 days of this, him feeling way better already. Sir Night-Eye can't help but wonder what would have happened if this kid got off one for all instead of Mirio. Maybe he just blocked it. Oh my god, sorry. Maybe he just blocked something great from happening. Either way, they continue training. This is until one day Sir Night-Eye gets a call. A call from Aizawa. Something had happened. He's returned back to class, confused, seeing a bruised and battered Todoroki and Ida. Ida with a scar on his stomach and on his arm. Ida went to fight Stain and Todoroki came just in time, fighting him off for 5 minutes straight before Endeavor took care of him. A close call. From there, they were gone to the finals. Deku's still training with Night-Eye on the side, getting permission from Aizawa to stay a little longer since he wasn't doing any, quote-unquote hero work yet. Deku studying and working with Sir Night-Eye would be extra ready. In the finals, he would finish the theory portion with ease and eventually start the prac. Like in canon, they're paired up, Bakugo and Deku being put together, this time against a healed All Might. Deku unintentionally helping his foe in battle. They go to the start line, Deku not even trying to talk to Bakugo. Both of them walk in silence, Bakugo trying to rush off as Deku runs behind. They're hit by a gust of wind tearing the city apart. Deku's blown up and away. He looks around, stick, throwing his hand out and grabbing onto the steel support beam, getting a hold and thankfully saving himself. He sighs, looking down to see All Might already facing off with Bakugo. Bakugo throws a barrage of explosions right at All Might with zero effect at all. All Might looking around for Deku. He eventually catches a glimpse of Deku hiding in the top of a broken building, pushing Bakugo away before running at Deku, appearing right next to him in a blur. So young Midoriya, what will you do now? Deku gets a flashback of the Nomu, the power he felt that day, how powerless he was. He screams, "Go away!" All Might caught off guard would be sent flying backwards against his will, slamming through building after building. Deku looks at him, his throat slightly scratching but fine for the most part. A grin formed on his face. To win this battle would mean to win it over the Nomu at the USJ. Unlike before, Deku ran straight in. All Might seeing him would grin too, knowing the power Deku had from watching him train. All Might mocks, well, young Midoriya, deciding to come at me by He's cut off, Deku's word piercing over his own, ricocheting around the city and around him. Slow. All Might's words slow down. To him, nothing changed until he sees Deku speaking once more, harden and buff. His words sounding strange and distorted, almost sped up. Then it hit him, or Deku did, slamming a fist into All Might's chin. All Might unable to react due to him being slowed down. Deku starting to feel the strain over himself. Bakugo comes in from above and slams a max power explosion on All Might midair. All Might bouncing off the floor, still slowed down. The impact slowly but surely getting to him. Deku shouts once more, fall. All Might midair slams back down to the floor, his slowness slowly going away, but the force still being on top of him, still being too much. This is until Deku slams to the floor himself. 4 commands in such a short time, and ones that were this strong were just too much. All Might slowly gets off the floor, the weight disappearing and the world around him getting quicker again. He coughs for a second before looking at Deku, smiling. You fought well, Midoriya. Deku looks up, breathing heavily, his throat shredded, until Bakugo comes up from behind him, slamming another max impact explosion at him. All Might being sent back a bit as Bakugo holds out his hand. Nerd, help me out and I'll kill you myself. I'm gonna blast him. You make it bigger, yeah? Before Deku can respond, Bakugo's already pulling the pin. All Might looking up to see a faint light flicker in the distance, before Deku screams, Amplify! Him coughing blood after speaking, but his quirk activating just in time. The faint light expands and condenses in front of Bakugo, his explosion shooting out of his gauntlet and absolutely destroying the city. Like, destroying it. At about the same scale as All For One's attack when they first fought the first time. All Might being knocked back into his weak form. The cameras being cut off as Deku and Bakugo make it through the gate. Bakugo helping Deku through. The class is shocked by the outcome. They beat All Might, and the attack was that powerful. After that, they all go back to class, being told by Aizawa about the next big event, the forest training camp. Like in canon, they will go shopping and stuff. Class on as usual. No Shigaraki attack, no nothing. Eventually hopping onto the bus and driving their way to the training camp. Making it halfway up the mountain like in canon before the teachers push the kids off the edge. They make their way through, making it a little bit quicker, thanks to Deku using his quirk on some other people to, increase their quirks. They make it like in canon having some dinner and sleeping off the first night. The second day rolls around and eventually both classes are sent to do quirk-specific training. Aizawa specifically training with Deku. He notices he has fundamentals down. He could fight hand to hand, his quirk could cover his bases, and he could be used for support, but he still had the weakness to for overusing it, or using it on stronger opponents than him. Aizawa remembering back to the USJ, he was gonna train Deku on that. They would hop into it. Aizawa straight away making Deku use his quirk over and over again constantly with no break. Deku did this all day and all night, legitimately could not speak anymore afterwards, though he felt good about the training. He felt like it was helping. Once again though, he slept the night off and the third day would finally arrive. Deku waking up would go to Aizawa once more, his voice back in action, though today he had a different type of training. He would be trying to use his quirk on himself for extended periods of time, or trying to do 2 commands at once like buffing himself and healing himself. This would ache, but to his surprise his voice was completely fine. Aizawa was impressed by his progress so far and would let him do his thing. And Deku would do this all day, eventually getting to a point where he could do 2 buffs at once for a short time or 1 buff on himself, but be bigger and stronger than usual. Then, finally, the nighttime would come around. Deku and the other class just chilling and doing the haunted forest thing like in canon, being sent in last. Deku walks in, kinda just chilling. Looking around, he had a weird feeling. He thought it was because he was scared of the dark or something. This is until he sees it. Smoke. Thick purple smoke wafting around the forest. He rushes, going in closer and closer. Heal. He jumps in right away, feeling the poison gas take effect on him. His quirk though fights it off. Deku knows it's poisonous. He looks around before yelling, "Release!" The gas shoots backwards and towards a tree in the distance. Deku smirks and rushes in, still healing himself, completely curing the gas in his body. The gas gets fully sucked back up and Deku knows exactly where the person is. Don't move. The man behind the tree is frozen solid, his muscles twitching but completely locked as Deku walks in from the corner. Well, who the hell are you supposed to be? The man's eyes go wide and his body is still locked. He doesn't say a word. Deku shakes his head. That won't do now. His voice goes down, his words once again echoing around the dead silent forest. Tell the truth. The man's eyes snap to Deku, his face shifting as he's forced to tell the truth. He was sent there by a man called All For One to get a kid named Bakugo and Deku. Deku's eyes go wide. They were after him? Not good. He makes the man sleep before jumping off, finding the top of the trees and rushing towards where he came from. Finding the teachers and telling them the info he knew before something slipped his mind. Coda. I didn't really explain this relationship, and I won't either because I'm slack. Just know that Deku rushes off to save him. Aizawa chasing after him from behind. He was a target. He couldn't let Deku go off alone. Deku makes it to the spot, seeing Coda on the edge of a cliff eating his dinner, completely unaware. Deku, panting, looks at him. Coda! Thank God you're safe. Coda looks at him, confused. Safe? Just as he says this, a creak is made from atop a rock behind him. Deku's eyes snap to see Aizawa behind him, puffed out too. What the hell are you doing, kid? You could get yourself... He's cut off, this time by a single man. A man floating up in the sky in front of him, about 100 meters off in the distance. The man looks at his hand, slowly and ominously floating up. Deku, Aizawa, and Coda are left speechless. They could feel his power from here, his bloodlust. Their eyes go wide as the man stops before looking right at them. His hand slowly lifts from his side, fingers twitching and pulsating. His arm inflates and zaps with electricity. Deku looks on. Something was up. Aizawa spoke first though. We gotta get out. Before he could even move, the attack is launched at them. The forest in front of them, the dirt, the rock and everything completely vanished from the sight as the attack travelled forward. They couldn't dodge. Think. He said the first word that came to his head. Shield! The wind and potency hitting the invisible force in front of them and ricocheting off around it. Aizawa looks at Deku. He saved their life. Now it's time to return the favor. Kid, we're not done yet. He uses his quirk on the man. All for one suddenly begin to fall from the sky as Aizawa cancels his quirks. Deku looking up, his head ringing. He couldn't hear anything. He sees the destruction in front of him, seeing Aizawa sweating and shivering to the right. He had to do something. Looking at All for One in the distance and saying a single word. Die. That's the whole story. Hope you enjoy, and I hope I can make this video 1 hour. I'm pretty sure I can, but you know. If you like this, leave a like, and if you made it this far, comment Diddy. The first person to comment Diddy will be pinned. Once again, huge thanks if you made this far. I had a blast writing this. Yeah, that's about it. If you have any suggestions, drop it down below, and I will see you again next time. Catch ya.